Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Delightful Kiss Boy, and today I'm asking the question, what is the best betting system? And to help me with this, I'm going to recruit an army of bots, surprise, surprise, 100,000 of them, and we're going to run some tests, get some data, figure out what the best betting system is. This is kind of a follow-up from my gambling tier list video, which, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. It was a lot of fun. Good old time. But this is kind of a little mini DLC to kind of tide over my gambling boys while I'm working on the buckshot stuff. But if this stuff sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing. I'm going to be doing a lot of gambling analysis, game analysis, probability, math, coding, all sorts of stuff. It's going to be fun. But without further ado, let's just get into it. So, first things first. What even is a betting system? Well, essentially, you walk into a casino, you go up to the baccarat table, the roulette wheel, the blackjack table, and you think to yourself, how much do I want to bet right now to maximize my chances of profiting? Well, that's where a betting system comes into play. It's a set of rules that tells you how much to bet and when. And usually it's put in terms of a starting bet amount or a number of units that you're going to bet. Now, when we say units, it's essentially just a standardized chunk of change. And sometimes people like to make it the minimum bet for the table, but it can really be whatever you want. It's just a way of scaling up these betting systems or scaling them down depending on what your needs are. So, for example, if you have a lower bankroll, you don't want to be making $100 bets. You want your unit to maybe be like $10, that kind of thing. But in general, what you're going to do is you're going to start off with a certain bet, and then you're going to adjust it over time based on the rules of the system. So you may like increase your bet amount when you win. You may increase your bet amount when you lose. You may switch it up during a streak. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. And so I just want to cover it and look into all the different systems you can use. There's plenty of them. Now, why am I making this video? Well, on the gambling tier list video, I got a lot of comments of people mentioning different betting systems, strategies, etc., etc. So a lot of people mentioned Martingale. This guy mentioned D'Alembert, the Life Alert. And this dude said, strat is shit. Some gambling games are best done by varying bets. That was in regard to the flat betting that the bots were doing for my tier list video. So this guy thinks that's a load of shit and that I should be varying the bets for a better outcome. Well, we're going to see. This person down here, they said their dad tried to tell him that he had a foolproof betting system and was wrong. So, I just want to look into this. It sounds interesting, and I was like, hey, I'll make my bots take a crack at it. Why not? So, another reason I'm doing it is because if you search betting system on YouTube, there's like 50 million of these videos. They all pop up where they're always like, can't lose betting system, 3 profitable strategies. It's always some schlubby-looking guy who's just in the thumbnail, like, win big, that sort of thing. We got best system ever, the Timmy system. 212 betting systems. There's like 50 million betting systems, and everybody's saying foolproof. This is the way to consistently win, etc., etc. And so I just want to look into some of these strategies and see, hey, is there anything to this? Is there a way that people can kind of consistently win or improve their odds of winning by following a betting system? Additionally, I kind of just want to waste your time and yap uselessly, as this comment suggested. But anyway, here is a thought experiment that I want to give to you, all right? Imagine that some nameless megalomaniac, well, not nameless, let's call him Mr. Yeast, arbitrary name. Mr. Yeast gives you $100,000 so that he can exploit you in one of his videos. And he says you have 24 hours to gamble it away. Or, gamble it and increase the amount that you have. But you have 24 hours. You got to gamble it all to make a good YouTube video. Now, here are the restrictions. You have to play baccarat, and you have to bet on the player every single time. You're playing at a table that has $100 minimum bets and $50,000 maximum bets. Assume that you can play 72 hands per hour. And that would mean that you'd have a total of a maximum number of 1,728 games that you can play in one day. Now, I'm not sure if these numbers are accurate. I think I got this number from wizardofodds.com. But let's just assume that, okay? It might be more, maybe less. It's beside the point. My question is, though, what would you do? How would you manage your money given this scenario? Mr. Yeast, you know, he's the breadwinner guy. He loves that bread, baby, and he's made Yeastables. They're little yeast packets he gives to children. I don't know. They suck them down. This is disgusting. I'm going to move on. But what would you do? You get $100,000. How would you manage your money? That's my question to you. So think about it right now because we're going to get into it. Now, I want to cover Baccarat real quick, just give you an idea if you haven't played it before, a general idea of what's going on. It's a card game that you play at the casino. It's not really much of a game because you as the player don't really do anything. You just come up to the table, there'll be a dealer there, and then you can either bet on player or you can bet on banker. There's also tie, but we're not going to worry about that. It's just player or banker. The dealer is going to follow some rules to flip cards over and determine who wins. Basically, they're going to flip cards over. Whoever has the higher score between the player and the banker, that's who wins. You are just going to watch. You have no input, after your initial bet. You just watch what happens. You see if the person you bet on wins or loses. Now, the banker, based on the way that the dealer plays, is slightly more likely to win than the player. But if you bet on banker and you win, they charge a 5% commission on what you bet. That being said, the expected value is still higher if you bet on banker. But in this case, we're betting on player. Now, if you bet on player, it pays out 1-to-1, but it's less likely to happen, and the bet overall has about a 1.24% house edge. Essentially, though, this acts as kind of a coin flip where your odds of winning are slightly worse than 50-50. So you can kind of think of Baccarat as a weighted coin flip in card game form, all right? And for this experiment, that's essentially what it's going to be, because a lot of these betting strategies work best when you're playing a game that's as close to 50-50 as possible, which many casino games are. Now, here's what we're going to do, all right? So we got our little bot bud right here. We're going to give him some money, his $100,000 allowance. He's going to go over to the Baccarat table here. He's going to get into the tank for a bit. I don't know why he disappeared, but that's what I did. And he's going to come back out, and he's looking a little worse for wear there. He's been gambling at Baccarat for 24 hours straight. I think he could use a coffee here, but hopefully he's going to win us some money. But he's going to be using one of, umpteen number of betting strategies that I'm going to be covering. He's going to hopefully win us money with that strategy, bring it back. We're going to count it up. I'll give him the thumbs up, and we'll add it to our data. All right, we're going to collect some data, and we're going to analyze it and determine once and for all what the best betting strategy is. Now, let's start off with the basics, the very basics, the thing that one dude in my comments section was calling horse shit because my bots were doing it. It's flat betting, all right? It's pretty simple. All you do is you bet the same thing every single time, all right? Start with $100, your $100 bet. Next bet you're going to do is $100, rain or shine. Whether you win or you lose, it's just $100 every single time. Whatever you want it to be, just keep the same amount that you're betting every single time. Now, we're going to be running 3 experiments, 3 groups of bots. There's going to be the minimum bettors, the maximum bettors, and the middle bettors. All right? So let's cover them all right now. Let's get the results of these experiments. So these are the minimum betting bots. Remember, the table minimum is $100. That's what these bots are fucking with, all right? So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be making $100 bets all the way up until the end of the day, assuming they don't go broke somehow. And we're going to see how much they have at the end of the day. All right, let's see what they did. So on average, they lost $2,331.56. So it's not a gain, but it's not, it's not that much of a loss compared to the initial $100,000 we gave them. The median change was they lost $2,300. Now, the largest loss that we have recorded here is from a bot named Chris Barella. Now, you'll notice I've given the bots last names this time because I have a confession to make. In the gambling tier list video, I actually only had 9,000 names about, so I had a lot of repeat names in the list. This time I wanted to remedy that, so I added last names to the mix, and I've generated 100,000 unique first name, last name pairs. So we have our first bot here, Chris Barella. All right, but he lost $19,400. Good fucking job, Chris. You suck. Largest profit though was from Nara Fur, which is a DeviantArt username if I ever heard one. That is definitely not a real name. That is a furry, a fursona. Anyway, they won though. Despite their fursona name, they've won $14,300, which is pretty darn good when you're just making minimum bets. Now let's take a look at the graph here, all right? So we can see it's a pretty simple graph when we're doing minimum bets. There's a lot of people that lost between $1,000 and $25,000, but it's more close to about $2,000. And we have a lot fewer, I should say, that won between $0 and $25,000 total. So let's bring up a little spinner here. Now, this spinner is supposed to represent, if you took this entire experiment and boiled it down to just one game of chance. You spin this spinner once, it should be equivalent to an entire day's worth of gambling following this strategy. So, boiling this down to a spinner, we've got a 28% chance of getting $5,525 by making minimum bets, and a 72% chance of losing $4,198. Not a great deal. The expected upside that we would have if we win is greater than our expected loss, but we're so much more likely to lose that it just doesn't really seem worth it. And finally, let's take a look at this last chart here. Now, this is the number of games played. Now, the reason I'm recording this is for a couple reasons, but one of the reasons is people told me in the last video they like games that they're going to be able to play for the whole day. So strategies that would allow you to gamble the whole day may or may not be better for you depending on which you prefer. So I'm going to be noting that in this case, when you're making minimum bets, not much of a surprise. Every single bot was able to play for the entire day without going broke. They played all 1,728 games. Now, this looks pretty good. I mean, it's like they lost a little bit, but they didn't really, they didn't really gain much. Even the biggest gainer kind of, got a 14% gain profit. Not that impressive. Let's move on to mid-sized bets. So it's not exactly between the minimum and the maximum bet, but I think $2,000 is pretty reasonable for what you would be doing if you had $100,000 to spend. That seems like, about an average bet right there. So we're going to be making $2,000 flat bets, or this group of robots will be doing that, I should say. The average loss was $39,307.42 for this group. The median loss was $54,000. Woof. The largest loss was $100,000, and Gwyneth Saunders was one of those bots that lost all of their money. Great job, Gwyneth. And the largest profit was Diane Horn with $300,000 following this strategy. Now let's take a look at this chart now. Now this one is a lot more dispersed, right? The last one, it was just these kind of two columns in the middle here. Now we have a lot more, the results are spread out a little bit more. But you can see here, the vast majority of players are losing close to, if not all of their money following this strategy. You have a smaller number that are losing a little bit less money than that. And then even smaller than that are the actual winners who, are winning a decent amount, but a lot of losers here. Let's take a look at the spinner. So in the spinner's case, if you spin it, 27% of the time you're going to be winning $51,564, roughly half of your initial bankroll is what you're going to be winning. And 73% of the time you're going to be losing $72,911, which is roughly 3/4 of your initial bankroll, which is pretty bad. I wouldn't spin this spinner. Now, the number of games played is pretty similar to what we had before. Most players are able to make it to the end of the day without going broke. But you can see here that all the way up until that last bar over here, we are losing some players. They're running out of money, and then they go home broke. Very sad stuff. Now, let's move on to our bravest soldiers, the biggest bald bots yet, the max betting group. So, let's see what they did. They're making $50,000 flat bets every single time. The table max They only have $100,000, and when they win $50,000, they put it right back on the table. These are some champs here, all right? Let's see how they did. The average change, the average loss for these bots was $63,626.50. The median change was a $100,000 loss. So most of the bots lost all of their money following this strategy. It's not very surprising, but most of them did. Now the largest loss, there's plenty that lost all of their money. This is just one of the bots. Don't mean to pick on them, but it's Shirley Sprouse losing $100,000. And the largest profit was a staggering $7,250,000 going to Ardith Binkley. And Binkley is an amazing last name. I like that last name. But congratulations, Ardith. You are our max bet big bald gambling champion. Incredible stuff. Well, let's see how everybody did in aggregate. Let's take a look at the chart here. Wow. All right. Well, on the minimum bet, we had 2 columns. In the maximum bet, we also have 2 columns. We got a ton of losers losing all of their money, and a select few champions making millions. Let's take a look at the spinner here. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, 98% of the time you're losing $99,999. 2% of the time you're winning $1,924,124. So you're winning a lot if you're able to line the little spinner up on that little sliver right there, but it's just really not going to happen that often. So it's a very risky move. Now, the number of games played here. The vast majority of bots are losing between 1 and 150 games. It's not very surprising because you can lose all of your money in as soon as 2 games, right? You make a $50,000 bet, flip a coin, you'll lose. All right, we'll make another one, and then you lose again. You're done. Tapping out, buddy. Good game. But we got some people up here, the absolute champs, who made it to the end of the day without going broke, including Ardith Binkley here. What a champion. So those are flat bets. So this is kind of just to establish a baseline, right? We've got 3 different reference points. These are basic betting strategies. We'll see how these other betting strategies compare to these ones. Now, we move on to the infamous Martingale. Now, how does the Martingale work? The Martingale is a betting system where essentially what you do is when you lose a bet, on your next bet, you're going to double what you're betting to make up for the loss that you just had. So you make a small bet, like $100. I mean, small is relative, but I'm talking about we got $100,000, buddy. $100,000 bankroll. $100 is chump change. Now, you make a small bet. If you win, good job. Excellent stuff. If you lose, you're going to double your next bet. So we can see here in this little chart here that I stole from casinotop10.net. That's where I got a lot of these betting systems from to implement in my code. But you can see here, we start off with 1 unit, which in this case we'll say is $100. We lose, so the next bet we're going to bet $200, 2 units. We lose again, we bet 4 units. We lose again, we bet 8 units, and it goes up exponentially. Now, if we win, assuming that we win before we lose all our money, then that last bet makes up for all of our prior lost bets, and we profit $100, our initial bet that we lost. So, in theory, the Martingale should guarantee profit. Eventually we're going to win, and that win is going to, that's a big ass win. It's going to make up for all of the losses that we had until that point, and we're going to win our initial bet. So it should be a source of guaranteed profit. In practice, however, we live in a thing called reality, which is unfortunate for us because we don't have infinite money, which is very sad indeed. But even if we did have infinite money, the casinos don't. It may seem like they do, but they do not. They have table limits. In this case, for this Baccarat table that we're playing at, it's 50 grand. Can't go above that. So no matter how much you're balling out with all your cash, can't go above the table limit. Therefore, you cannot martingale indefinitely. But we can try our best with what we've got. So what we can do is we can kind of cap our level, our martingale level, or our doubling factor, and try to make the best of what we have. So let's run a little experiment before the actual experiment, just to get an idea of what's going on here, all right? So we're going to start with $100 bets here. So, starting with $100 bets, we're going to run through varying degrees of doubling, right? So, essentially with the system, you're going to determine I'm going to double n number of times, and then after that, if I lose again, I just tap out, right? I've gone broke. I'm not going to make a bigger bet than that. I'm done for the day. That could either be the table max, that could be based on how much bankroll you have left. You're like, I don't want to bet that much to try to recoup my losses, right? So let's start off with, the very basic scenario. A maximum bet of $200. So you make your initial bet of $100. If you lose that one, you make another bet of $200. If you lose that one, you're out. But if you win that one, you've won your initial bet. So just by doing this, we've increased our odds of winning $100 from a coin flip, roughly a coin flip, less than a 50-50, to now we're winning 74% of the time. 74% of the time we're winning $100 following this strategy. It's 26% of the time we're losing $300, so the loss is greater than the profit, but it's happening, only 26% of the time. Well, let's see if we can martingale a larger amount. Let's increase our maximum bet to $400, double this one. So now 87% of the time we're winning $100. 13% of the time we're losing $700. So our chances of winning are going up the more that we're willing to double. So let's do it again. Maximum of $800. We have a 93% chance now of winning, 7% chance of losing $1,500. Moving on, we have a maximum bet of $1,600. 97% of the time we are winning $100. 3% of the time we're losing $3,100. Moving on down here, max bet of $3,200. 98% of the time we're winning $100. 2% of the time, this little sliver here, we're losing $6,300. This is kind of the inverse of that one graph of the max betting that we had earlier. And now we've got a $6,400 max bet, 1% chance of losing, $12,800 max bet. It's gone down to 0%. Now, it's not actually 0%. It's just rounded off to 0. But it's essentially, it's getting pretty darn unlikely that we're going to lose, assuming we can just keep doubling. And it gets even smaller still with our max bet of $25,600. Now, we cannot double again because, as I said earlier, the table max is $50,000. Doubling this one would put us at, $51,200. There we go. I can do math. But we cannot do that because the max table bet is $50,000. So if we lose this one, we just tap out. We're just done. So this last scenario over here, actually these last two, this 0%, this is less likely to happen. This loss is less likely to happen than dying from a car crash in your life, which, depending on your perspective, may actually just say a lot about how dangerous cars are. But that aside, it's really, really unlikely that we're going to lose our initial $100 bet, assuming that we follow this system. So this seems like a foolproof system, right? 99.9% of the time, we're going to be winning our initial bet. So let's let the bots use this strategy, and I'm assuming that 99% of them are going to profit, and only 0.1% of them are going to lose money, and they'll lose all their money, but it's so unlikely. I'm assuming it's going to be like 10 bots, right? It's so likely that they're going to win. So let's take a look at the data. Now, this is the Martingale results. So what I'm doing is I've actually adjusted the number a little bit. This is assuming that you're making a starting bet of $100. In my experimentation, I actually increased it to $190. That's just because the doubling factor with $190 gets us closer to that max of $50,000 without going over. So basically just imagine this same scenario, but it's $190 that we're starting with. We're just doubling it every time. All right. So we're going to run that experiment. Let's see what happens. And here are the results. Average change. They all, on average, lost $10,421.31. That doesn't seem right. If they have like a 99% chance of winning, why is the average loss $10,000? I guess maybe the people who were unlucky lost so hard that it kind of offset the gains. That's my guess. Well, let's take a look at the median. The median loss is $44,460. Now, that should not be happening. If 99% of them are winning, why is the median negative? That doesn't make any sense. The largest loss was $97,090 from Takis Cornet, which is an incredible name. It makes me think of a gas station, ordering your Takis, and cornet's kind of like a bugle, right? You know, like cornet's like a little trumpet, so it's kind of like two different chip names put together. Incredible stuff there. And our largest profit is from Randall Teal, who won $163,590. So he did well, but what is going on here? So I thought that the Martingale was supposed to pretty much guarantee us a win with a tiny chance of catastrophic losses, but it seems like the median bot is losing money here. So let's take a look at the chart here. What the hell is this? So most of the bots are losing money following the Martingale strategy, which just doesn't seem right to me, right? Let's take a look at the spinner. So 28% of the time, only 28% of the time you're profiting with Martingale. So 28% of the time you're winning $110,359. 72% of the time you're losing $58,267. That is bizarre. So let's look at number of games played here. Most of them made it to the end of the day, but we lose a lot of people along the way. So there's a lot of people getting knocked out earlier on in the games, and that's interesting to me. So let's figure out what's going on here. Let's figure out what the hell's going on, because this was supposed to be guaranteed upside, right? At least that's what the YouTube shorts will fucking tell you. So let's look at one attempt, all right? So I brought this chart back up. This is when we're martingaling up to, we're doubling up to, what was it, $25,600 So you can see here, there is a like 99.99% chance that we're going to win. So that's one bet of Martingale for $100. So we've won our $100. So let's go to attempt 2. Now attempt 2, if we do 2 attempts, we have a still 100% chance of winning $200 now. But you can see here, it's still 0% up here, but the sliver has grown in 2 attempts. But it's growing really slowly, so it's probably not that big of a deal. 3 attempts, okay, it's gone up to 1% now. So now we're winning $300. So 3 Martingales. And 99% of the time we're winning $300. Well, let's skip forward a bit. Let's see if we do 20 attempts, right? 20 Martingale bets. Okay, well in this case, wow, it's up to 4% of the time you're losing $50,000. 96% of the time you're winning $2,000. Now, let's look at 100 attempts. Wow, it is up to 20% of the time you're losing $46,000. 80% of the time you're winning $10,000. And let's increase it all the way up to 1,000. And on 1,000 attempts, we are now more likely to lose money than we are to win, even though each individual Martingale we are almost guaranteed to win. But in aggregate, we are more and more likely to lose the more of them that we do. Now, it's basically what's happening is our chances of losing are compounding every single time that we're doing this, okay? You can imagine it. So they're running games all day. Now, it's unlikely that when you come up to the table, you're going to have a huge losing streak. But if you're sitting there playing over and over and over again, it's highly likely that within 1,000 attempts of martingaling that you're going to hit at least one losing streak where it's just loss after loss after loss. So the martingale is a deceptive betting strategy where it seems like you can't lose. But the reality is, if you don't have an infinite bankroll, you can't bet infinitely, etc., you are going to lose just as much as any other strategy in the long run. There's nothing magical going on with the martingale strategy. So really, it's not that much different than any other betting strategy. So it's an interesting thing. If you see videos about people telling you, oh, you can win so much money with martingale, not really, Honestly, you're just kind of opening yourself up to catastrophic losses. Let's move on. to the Labouche. I don't know how to pronounce that shit. Who cares? Labouche. Now, this is an interesting strategy. Essentially, what you start off by doing is you come up with a goal, a target amount that you want to have at the end of the gambling session, a target win amount, okay? In this case, we're going to say we want to win $50,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to arbitrarily divide up this 50,000 goal into a set of components in a list. So in this case, this is kind of just arbitrary. There's $5,000 plus $10,000 plus $20,000 plus $10,000 plus $5,000. That adds up to 50,000, right? So that's 40,000 in the middle plus 10,000 on the outside there. Now what you do with this strategy is once you have these numbers, you can either write them down or keep track of this in your head. It's probably kind of hard to keep track of it in your head depending on how many numbers there are. You'll see what I mean in a second here. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the two numbers on the outside here, if there are two numbers. If there's just one number remaining, you just take that number. You add them together, and then that's going to be your next bet. So in this case, we add $5,000 to $5,000, and our first bet is going to be $10,000. Now, in the case of our first bet, we get a gold star because we win. Excellent stuff. So we've won $10,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross off these two numbers from our list. The numbers that we use to generate this initial bet, we cross them off from the list. Then we repeat the process again. We take the two remaining numbers on the outside, add those together, and now our second bet is going to be $20,000. Now in this case, we lose, we get a scary, bullshit image, and that indicates a loss here. Now, what do we do in the case of a loss? We don't cross the numbers out. Actually, what we do is we take the loss amount, so in this case it was $20,000, and we tack it on to the end of the list. And now this becomes part of our betting. So our next bet, we would add the $10,000 to the $20,000, and our next bet after that would be $30,000. You repeat this process either until you run out of money, i.e. you can't make another bet following this system, you don't have enough money, or you cross out all of the numbers in your list, and then at that point you have achieved your goal. So let's take a look at the results. Also, if this sounds convoluted and annoying to you, you are correct. This is really kind of bizarre, but let's see if all of this nonsense adds up to a good outcome, right? Because a more complex system should theoretically reward us more, right? You'd assume. So let's take a look at the data. Wow, I forgot to animate that, but we're rolling with it. We're rolling with it. Spoilers, don't look over there, okay? Now, the average loss following this strategy was only $1,694.90. That's even less than the minimum bettors, which is interesting. The median change was $50,000. So this is the first time the median has been positive, which is also very interesting. And the largest loss, though, was $100,000, which was, fortunately, Madeline Villarreal. That's like a Game of Thrones villain or some shit. I don't know. And the largest profit was $50,000 by Shirley Sprouse. Didn't Shirley show up earlier? I can't remember. Anyway, I can't remember this shit. But Shirley Sprouse, there's a ton of people who won $50,000, but Shirley is one of those people. Anyway, spoiler alert. But here's our graph with the winnings, starting with $100,000. We have a few people losing a lot of money, and we have a lot of people winning $50,000. So this seems like a pretty good system so far, right? 54% of the time you're winning $50,000, but 46% of the time you're losing $62,000. So if you average these out, you're still losing money on average, right? But why is the average loss so low? Well, it's because you're barely playing any games. Now, let's kind of go back and analyze what's going on here, right? This is essentially martingale to a win goal, all right? This kind of macro scale martingale to the win goal, because you're tacking on your losses to what you need to bet in the future. This is kind of just indirect martingale. But you're doing it, assumedly, with larger values. So that essentially means that this boils down. Remember how I was showing you those graphs earlier where you have like a 74% chance of winning if you martingale even just once? Well, you're essentially doing that here, and you're only playing about, I think I looked at it, was like 6 games on average, right? So you make a few big-ass bets, and then you tap out. And now we actually have a higher probability of winning, but if we lose, we're losing a lot more than we're gaining, right? So proportionally, you know, basically the expected value is still negative, but our chances of winning are higher. So this looks promising. This looks interesting. Now, let's take a look at the overall results. Now, there are other systems that I've run through, but I don't think talking about them in detail is very interesting. So instead, I've just kind of aggregated the results in this chart here. So let's take a look. So we have our minimum flat, our mid flat, and our max flat. We got our martingale and then Paroli. Now Paroli, I'll just explain the ones that I didn't cover. Paroli is essentially reverse martingale. So instead of doubling your bet when you lose, you double your bet when you win. Now we have our Labouche here, and then this is a flat bet with a $50,000 win cap, which is just basically you set a win goal. When you hit the win goal, you quit, you're done, you tap out, but you keep betting up until then. I just did it with flat betting. Then we have the D'Alembert, which is a strategy that's kind of like a martingale light. So essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to start off with like a certain bet amount. So in the case of this experiment, I started off with the bots betting $500. If you win, you reduce your bet by a certain unit amount, which in this case I was reducing it by $100. So if we win the bet, we reduce our next bet to $400. If you win the bet, or sorry, if you lose the bet, you increase your next bet by $100, and you just kind of keep doing that for the entire day, either until you run out of time or you run out of money. And then the last one is 1326, which is kind of a weird little system where you're basically keeping track of streaks. So basically, if you win, so first of all, you just bet your unit amount. So in this case, you could say like $100. If you win that one, then you bet 3 times your unit amount. So the next bet would be $300 if your unit is $100. And then if you win again, your next bet after that would be 2 times your unit, so that'd be $200. And if you win that again, then you bet 6 times your unit amount, which would be $600. If at any point you lose in this streak, you just reset, and you keep doing that over and over again. Now, if you look at this chart, I'm not going to go through all of the numbers, but feel free to pause and take a look. But you'll see there's a lot of, kind of 28%-ish and 72% for winners versus losers. But you can see there's a lot of different numbers here. So this would lead you to believe that your betting system is extremely important and has a high impact on your, how you're going to do for the day. I mean, I think that it'd be pretty rational to assume that. And there's plenty of other betting systems out there that are all going to have different results. So it's kind of overwhelming. You have to just run all these numbers. You have to learn about all these different systems, and you got to see which one's best for you. I mean, like, for example, Labouche, it's like you're winning 54% of the time. That seems pretty damn good to me, right? Well, the reason that I don't feel the need to cover other betting systems, there's some shit like the Fibonacci sequence. I'm just going to tell you, don't worry about it, because all of this here, this is all certified nonsense, all right? All of this. So, remember the guy who was saying I was here to waste your time? Well, I've just wasted a bunch of your time, because all of this shit right here, this is real data, but this is all bullshit, okay? All of these systems are essentially exactly the same. This is all nonsense. Anybody who is peddling you a system is full of shit, all right? And let me explain why. Let's go on to here. I left out one very key piece of information here, all right? And that is the average amount that you're betting following these systems, all right? Let's go through it. Now, with the minimum flat bet, if you're following this strategy, on average, the amount that you've bet over the course of the entire day, on average, is $173,000. If you're doing mid bets, it's $2.9 million. And then max flat, you're betting $4.75 million on average over the course of a day. Martingale, $774,000. This is the column. This is actually the most important column because, let me tell you something. When we divide our average losses by the average amount that we're betting, every single time it's going to come up with roughly the same number. And you know what that number is? Negative 1.3%. Now, what is negative 1.3%? That looks approximately like the house edge for betting on player in Baccarat, right? So these systems, there's a bunch of fucking hand-waving going on, but really the only thing that's happening is that these systems are leading you to bet different amounts of money and make varying numbers of bets. That is all that is happening. It's all certified nonsense. These are all essentially the same fucking thing, all right? So anytime that we have a larger loss on average from one of these systems, it's because we're betting more. If we're having a smaller loss, so in this case, look at Labouchère, we're only on average betting $136,000. This is all the same shit. It's just that these different rules are leading you to bet different amounts in this hand-wavy fashion. So this guy who earlier was saying I was wasting your time, he was completely right. All this experimentation up to this point, complete bullshit, doesn't fucking matter. So let's cover. These are the only things that matter when it comes to betting amounts, all right? Your betting strategy. The only thing that matters is the more that you bet, the more that you lose on average, right? So you play a game that has a negative expected value. The more you bet, the more you lose, bud. Now, the other thing is, the more you divide your bets, the less variance you will get. And I'll get into what that means in a second here. The less variance that you get, though, the more likely you are to lose money, but the losses and wins are going to be smaller, right? So the more bets you do, the lower the variance. The lower the variance, the more likely you are to lose money, but your loss will be small. If you want to maximize your variance, which means that you can have a catastrophic outcome or a really good outcome, you can bet your winnings too. You make fewer, larger bets. This right here, these are the only things that matter. So all those systems that these people are talking about, this is it. This is everything they're doing. Everything they're doing is just bullshit hand-waving because at the end of the day, this is all that matters. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about with that variance thing, right? What is the difference between one $50,000 bet and two $25,000 bets? Well, you may think, well, you're betting $50,000 total. It's the same thing. Well, you'd be kind of incorrect because let's take an example with a coin flip, right? So we're not going to do with Baccarat just to keep the math simple here. This is on a coin flip. You have a $50,000 bet. If you win the coin flip, you get $50,000. If you lose the coin flip, you lose $50,000. So let's take a look at our one bet example. With one bet, half the time we're going to lose $50,000, half the time we're going to win $50,000. If we make two $25,000 bets, 25% of the time we're losing $50,000, 50% of the time we're breaking even, and 25% of the time we're winning $50,000. Now, as you break up your bets into smaller and smaller pieces, getting closer to that minimum $100 flat betting, what you are doing is you're approximating a normal distribution. Now, a normal distribution is essentially when you kind of average things out, it's the most common distribution that you're going to find in statistics or nature or whatever. Essentially what it's saying is as you take a sample, the vast majority of the data in your sample is going to fall in the middle, close to the mean, the average, right? And then the data that gets further and further away from that average is going to be few and far between. So on the left here, we could say all the way to the left is losing $50,000. On the right, we have winning $50,000, and then we have break even right in the middle. So in the case where we're making two bets, 50,000 bucks happening 25% of the time on the left. Winning is over here. And then most of the time we're going to break even. If you keep subdividing the bet, it keeps building out this curve here, right? Where you're pushing your most probable result closer and closer to the middle here, which is 0, right? In this case with a coin flip. Now, casino games are not a coin flip, so what's happening is we're actually not breaking even at 0. Instead, we've shifted over our break-even point into the negatives. So it's slightly, basically the more bets that you make, you're going to converge at a slight loss. Now that's why, in our chart from earlier, let me go back for a sec, you can see here, the vast majority of the time you see there's a small number of winners, and the percentage of the percent chance of winning gets higher the fewer games that you play, essentially. So in this case here, with the Labouche, we're only playing on average 6 games. That means that our percentage chance of winning is greater. Now, the losses, if we lose, is proportional to the additional likelihood of us winning, so we're still having a negative expected value, but essentially the fewer games you play, the more likely you are to win. Now, if we go up here and we look at a $1,728 game average betting strategy, you can see here, 27% of the time they're winning and 71% of the time they're losing. It's because they've subdivided their bet over and over and over again, which reduces the variance and pushes them to a mean, an average, that is left of the break-even point. That means the average player is losing. So basically, the more bets you make, the more likely you are to lose, but the amount that you're going to lose is going to be smaller than if you swing for the fences and try to just go big in a couple of bets, right? So you can see here, our max loss with the min flat bet is $19,000 loss, and our max loss with the Labouche is all of your money, right? So you're going to be winning 54% of the time, but you're going to be losing all of your money quite often. That's the trade-off, all right? So those are the only things that matter. It is the magnitude, how much you're going to be betting on any given bet, and how much you're subdividing your bets. Everything else is just nonsense, hand-wavy bullshit. So, I'm going to give you the Delightful Kiss Boy certified guaranteed win strat, which is not a guaranteed win, but I figured I'd take a tip from the fucking, gambling influencers on YouTube. Let's run through. This is the universal gambling technique. This will work for all scenarios. It is just as valid as anything else. Let's go through it. Now, point number 1, peep that bankroll, buddy. Now, this is important. Every single time you look at your bankroll, you want to be looking at it with fresh eyes. You don't want to be thinking about at all what your previous losses were, regardless of what somebody tells you, like with the Martingale system, where you're keeping track of your losses to try to figure out how much you're betting. No, when you peep the bankroll, you are a new man. This is your new bankroll, all right? You forget everything that's happened in the past. You just assume that you've entered a casino, and everything from this point is just going to be based on as if you just entered the casino with this much money. So what you're going to do after you peep the bankroll is you're going to say, do I want to probably lose money? You're going to ask yourself that question. Do I want to probably lose money? Because that's what's going to happen when you gamble at a casino. If the answer is no, go buy a fucking hot dog. I don't give a shit. Get out of here. Good on you. You don't want to gamble anymore? You call it a day. Go get a hot dog. That's actually explicitly part of this gambling strat. So you will gain weight following this gambling strat, but that's unavoidable. If you do want to probably lose money, you can continue to the next step. Now, you have to ask yourself, do I want to have a high volatility outcome? Now, that is completely up to you, right? So do you want it to be a crazy result, or do you want it to be a little bit more predictable? Factors that go into this question. How much longer am I going to be here for the day, right? Are my friends going to be here all day long? And if I blow all of my money on one big bet, I'm going to be sitting here bored for the entire day? Do I want to try to stay as long as I can to try to get some free drinks? Do I have to piss really bad, so I just want to get this over with so I get the fuck out of here? These are all questions that are going to go into your decision here, and most of them are not going to be quantitative. It is really just going to be, what do you want to do in the moment, okay? What are you feeling? Do you want to risk it all or do you want to risk a little? Now, if you don't want to have a high volatility outcome, that was Gus sneezing in the background there, then you're going to want to bet small. So make a small bet. It can be whatever. The system does not dictate what it needs to be. It's arbitrary. Just make it a small bet compared to your bankroll. If you want it to be a high volatility outcome, then just bet big. Whatever you feel like. It doesn't matter. All right? You just bet a big bet because you want a high volatility outcome. Very cool stuff. Now, you see if you win, and regardless of whether you win or not, you go back to square one and you forget everything that just happened, and you peep your bankroll with fresh eyes. You're a new man. Did you just lose $10,000? You're a new man. Your bankroll is $10,000 lighter, and you've just entered the casino, all right? And you're going to continue doing this until you break out of the loop and go buy a fucking hot dog. That is the Delightful Kiss Boy guaranteed win that is not a guaranteed win strat, all right? Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry, I got very impassioned towards the end there, but it just makes me upset when people are peddling, you know what I'm talking about. They're peddling these different algorithms as surefire ways to win. It's misleading people, and it's deceptive. So thank you for watching. I hope you got a kick out of this, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.